This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode, I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 371 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast on 2026 travel trends. Firstly, let me pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, where I'm recording this podcast today. Scarily, 2026 is just around the corner. Apparently, it's November already. You've probably seen the onslaught of articles about travel trends for 2026. If you haven't, well, they certainly target me, and I always find them kind of fascinating. There's some that just focus on particular places they think will be popular. Sometimes they can actually tell this because they've got access to data on what people are searching for or booking. Sometimes it's a hunch. Sometimes I think it's just marketing. And then there are other articles that talk about broader trends and how people might be approaching trips and travel in new ways or in some of the ways that we're already familiar with, but, going deeper. So later in this episode, I've got some chats about 2026 travel trends with some representatives from Intrepid Travel and from Expedia, and then some ideas about the particular destinations that are predicted by all of these different articles to be popular next year. But before we get to that, I just wanted to share what I've learnt about kind of the key trends from looking at a bunch of these articles. So I'm going to start with Hilton's report, and I liked this because it was labelled the whycation idea, as in, why are you going on your trip? What is the purpose for it? Not just, I'm going away somewhere because I can or because I just want to. I like the idea of starting to encourage people to stop and think, what's the reason for this trip? And, can I add some purpose to it? And a couple of their trends included what they'd called kind of quiet and calm travel, which was all sorts of things, including being in nature, resting, improving mental health, wellness travel. They also mentioned an increasing trend for more family travel and especially multi-generational travel, whether that's, 3 or 4 generations at once or grandparents taking children and so on. And also a real resurgence in the popularity of road trips, especially in the US. Those results came out of 14,000 adults surveyed across the world, so some interesting trends in there. The next one I looked at was Booking.com's Travel Predictions Report. They survey 30,000 people across the world, so, some interesting ideas come out of that. They usually have some really sort of specific trends that they identify. There's a couple of, to me, surprising ones this year. It might be that they perhaps skew to a younger demographic than me, but one of interest was romantasy retreats. So that kind of romantic fantasy idea, castles, medieval banquets, even role-playing retreats. So that was an interesting one. Also, robot-enhanced vacation rentals. Apparently, people are very keen to have, a robotic chef or robotic cleaners. Apparently, a sustainability robot is mentioned. I have no idea what that means, but, yeah, there you go. Another one that I was surprised by was like relationship tests, as in you take like a potential partner or, friends and stuff on a trip together intentionally to kind of test out your compatibility. I can kind of see why this works because, you do learn a lot about people by traveling with them as opposed to kind of doing everyday life, but not sure any kind of test is a good idea. They also talked about road trips again because of the ability to be spontaneous and flexible. I'm all for that. Also wellness travel, but more specifically skincare related. I would not have understood this except that I'm off to Seoul next week, and a number of people, when I've said I'm going to Seoul, they're like, oh, the skincare. So I'm not going to Seoul for this reason, but I get that, there are lots of people interested in that. Again, the quiet stuff, quiet hobbies in nature was mentioned as a trend, birding, fishing, hiking, etc. And this was a cute one, heritage nostalgia, revisiting a place, especially to kind of retake a photo, recreate situations with people. I have to confess I have done this in the past. And also DNA destinations. That's something I'm also curious about myself. Many of us have done, kind of ancestry tests. And, now I can narrow down some of my ancestry to particular parts of Ireland. And I would absolutely seek out going to those places if I was going to be in the area. So that was some interesting ones. From Skyscanner, their 2026 trends were, again, beauty and wellness. So this is a kind of a recurring theme. Literature, so going where novels are set, having a reading retreat. This will come up again. And supermarket safaris as part of their food trend. If you've listened to my Bangkok episode, you'll know a highlight was spending an hour trolling all the aisles of the Big C supermarket in Bangkok. I am all for a supermarket safari. And again, multi-generational travel. So this is one that does seem to be coming up a lot. Now, a little bit different was the Virtuoso Lux report, where they polled 2,400 travel advisors who are kind of experts in luxury travel. This report identified some of the top trends as, again, family and multi-generational travel, also active trips, cultural immersion, and expedition cruising. They also asked an interesting question about if climate change is causing your clients, remember these were travel advisors, is climate change causing your clients to travel differently? And almost half of them responded yes. And the reasons were sometimes good and sometimes bad, in my opinion. So, for example, a lot of people choosing to travel on shoulder season or off-peak seasons when the weather is more manageable, so not in the extreme heat of summer, and also deliberately choosing destinations with less extreme weather. Purchasing travel insurance to protect from natural disasters. Yes, okay, so it's, being aware of what's happening. The one I didn't like was prioritizing vulnerable destinations in travel plans, as in like, okay, let's quickly get to this one. It's a little bit, got to go before we can't. I'm not so keen on that. So that was an interesting outcome, I thought, overall. I also checked the Priceline Travel Trends report. Some repeat offenders here, not repeat offenders, just repeat trends. Family travel. Interestingly, they highlighted with kids having input into the itinerary. Also nostalgic travel to childhood vacation spots I like, and active coastal trips. Then I looked at the Explore Worldwide trend report. They are talking about off-peak travel, connecting with communities I like, quote-unquote non-viral destinations, which is a funny way to think about it, but also, good, I think. Microdosing retirement, which is really cool. It's a nice way of putting it, as in having a gap year or taking a longer trip before you reach retirement age, doing some of those things you would usually save till retirement, but doing them earlier. And another interesting one was family travel, as we've mentioned so many times, but this one highlighted often parents traveling with adult children. So, young adult children who perhaps can't afford to travel much, but they can afford if mum and dad pay, and they're going on these trips together, which is also like a nice outcome, I think, even if it's financially motivated. And my last trend is something that was in Trafalgar's trend report, and it was actually described as a regulation trend, which is a bunch of countries who are adding or increasing tourist taxes that are tied to climate crisis in some way. So, for example, apparently Hawaii this year added the green fee, which has to be used for wildlife recovery, reef restoration, climate adaptation, that kind of thing. Greece increased its climate crisis resilience fee, and it's especially high, increased dramatically for those really over-touristed islands like Mykonos and Santorini during peak periods, and those funds go to supporting disaster prevention, restoring ecosystems, etc. And also in New Zealand, they increased their international visitor levy significantly, and that money is to be used just for conservation, like establishing new habitat sites, protecting marine species, etc. I kind of like those. Now, all of these reports are, of course, commissioned within the travel industry. I think they all need to be taken with a grain of salt because there's a lot of motivations that come behind them. But what heartens me a lot is that even if, there's a marketing meaning behind them, they are still, so many of them, heading in this more thoughtful direction, much more so than in the last few years. So I feel kind of optimistic that as a whole, we are trying to think about doing better. In terms of the destinations likely to be popular in 2026, according to these reports, I'm coming back to that after these interviews. So my first guest today is Brett Mitchell. He's the Managing Director of Intrepid Travel for Australia and New Zealand, and I asked him about what travel trends they are anticipating in 2026.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we're seeing trends, but they're not necessarily new trends, I think it's fair to say, Amanda. We've got sort of 4 key, trends coming through. They're sort of accelerated out of COVID, if anything, but they have always been there, and we predict them to, again, be pretty strong in 2026. That focus around more active travel. We're definitely seeing that. We're seeing that through the growth of our walking and hiking product and also our cycling product.
Mm-hmm.
Just people wanting to do more when they're traveling. I think even that baby boomer generation who are probably fitter than ever before, and they're just wanting to do more, and good, healthy way to travel, I think. We're also seeing a lot of growth into lesser known destinations, no doubt fueled from some of the mass tourism protests we obviously see in Europe and the like, but just a real demand for people wanting new experiences. So, we're seeing people certainly go and see the iconic sites of a destination, whether it's the pyramids or Taj Mahal, but they're also then wanting to go out and explore other areas within the destination, lesser known areas, which we think's really great to see because, it just spreads the wealth and the benefits of travel throughout the whole community. So we think that's a great trend. What do they say? They say 80% of all travellers go to 10% of places in the world. So I think the more we can encourage people to get off the beaten track and see these other areas is a good thing, and we're definitely seeing that. Third main trend is definitely probably our family theme. We're seeing the families now just really wanting to get out and share experiences with their kids or even with grandparents at times. So we're seeing a lot of family groups going out. Our family range is growing really quickly. We're starting to put on a lot more destinations, a lot more departures. So to see families going out and experiencing new cultures together, I think is a great thing. And then the other trend, which is not necessarily new, but it's solo travel. And again, that solo travel, all ages, youth, but also in the baby boomer range. People wanting to get out, not necessarily finding time to collaborate with other partners or their friends, and they're deciding, well, I've just got to go. We're in busy lives, and they're picking to travel and going with group travel, I think, is certainly a good way for those solo travellers to have that social, I guess, bond and social connection as well as seeing places. So they're the four key trends that we're seeing.
Oh, I love all of them because I think they all fit into being a thoughtful traveller as well. For a start, the more active travel, the hikes and so on, I mean, that really slows you down, doesn't it? So you get to experience a place in more detail.
Yeah, that's right. We're actually probably seeing that in two ways. I think most long-haul travel, we're seeing a lot of our customers choosing to stay longer, and that is good. So they're looking at more in-depth experiences, and as you say, that really slows you down and you get to really meet the locals and see the places. I think slower travel is a great way to travel, and we're seeing slower travel, particularly in Europe on a lot of our train journeys as well. I think it's a great way to travel personally.
Yeah, I love a good train trip. I think that's the sad part about Australia is we don't have enough good high-speed
infrastructure.
rail. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, I love that about Europe. It's fabulous. My last question now is about the whole over-tourism thing. So obviously, you guys are, really trying to send people to lesser-known destinations, but people still want to go to the big famous spots.
Yeah, that's right. And quite rightly, I mean, some of these iconic places are incredible, aren't they? But, there's no reason why you can't do both. It's about, I guess, researching and speaking to tour operators or your local trusted travel agent about all these other amazing areas that are off the beaten track, desperately need tourism, are ready for tourism. A lot of these areas and different locations are actually preparing for tourism in a sustainable way. So you can have those incredible experiences, as you say, and a lot more authentic, really being able to sit down and meet locals, talk to locals, do it in a non-crowded way, often with much better value as well, not being in these really crowded hotspots. So I think the options are there now. It's probably just, seeking them out a lot more. Like I said before, there's no reason why you couldn't go and see some of the amazing icons like the Taj Mahal, but at the same time, then go and spend, a good 3, 4, 5 days out into the countryside, seeing some of the other amazing treasures of India as an example.
Yeah.
It's out there. It's ready to go. We publish every year a list called the Not Hot List, and it certainly does look to try and put a spotlight on these sort of lesser known destinations. Some great destinations this year. Some of the destinations we mentioned last year actually made it into the New York Times 52 places you want to get to. And yeah, so I just think you will be blown away by some of these lesser-known destinations, and pretty good bragging rights as well when you come home and get to tell people about these places you've been to.
I do always enjoy looking at Intrepid's Not Hot List, and I'll mention some of those places towards the end of the episode when I talk about the destinations for 2026. My next guest is Melanie Fish, who is Vice President of Global PR for the Expedia Group. They released their Unpack 26 study last month, and it outlined their predictions of travel trends for 2026. So, of course, a lot of these kind of reports cross my virtual desk every year, but this time Expedia's caught my eye because they had done something a little different.
We rely on Expedia's data to tell us what the destinations of the year are going to be for the coming year. Where is interest just really surging? And we've done that again this year, but we've done something else as well. With millions of daily visitors to the Expedia app and site, we really have unique insight into where travelers are headed next. But with powering all that travel comes some responsibility to the world. And Expedia takes that very seriously, but also is trying to figure out what our role is. We are not the arbiters of where people should and should not travel. We don't define over-tourism. But we do have a responsibility, I feel, to inform people. That's how we can help people. And that's how we can help take care of the destinations people are traveling to. Give them information with which they can make smart decisions. So what we did in Unpack 26 is we laid out the destinations of the year based on Expedia data. And then we went to a true expert in the field, the World Travel and Tourism Council. And we said, tell us, how can we inform people who come to Expedia which of these destinations is doing a really good job fighting over tourism? And the WTT said, we'll help you, but first of all, you need to understand that this isn't just about avoiding over-tourism. It's about transforming the way we think about travel. And it goes deeper. It evaluates a destination's capacity, resilience, and community well-being. And the WTTC laid out a framework on how destinations can do that. We put each destination of the year through the WTTC's framework. And if they met at least 4 of the 6 guidelines to really taking care of their communities, then we gave it a simple check mark. And we call it the Smart Travel Health Check. And it just says to travelers, this is not only a place that is surging in interest, it is a place that is aware of that and is taking proactive steps to make sure their community and the people are taken care of and that tourism is a good thing.
I absolutely love this approach of even just introducing a whole lot more travelers to this to thinking about this and having this language around it and seeing it in a report like Expedia's, which a lot of people look at and think, oh, wow, that's in the top 10. I want to go there. But just having that extra layer of, why have they got these ticks? I want to know more about that. That's really, I love the way that will introduce, being a thoughtful traveler essentially to this much wider audience.
Well, it's so important that we're talking about it because this almost defines what a thoughtful traveler is. It's not someone who says, oh, I only go to places where you can travel with a backpack and eat off the land. That's not what it is.
That's a minority, exactly. Now, I'm very keen to dive deeper into a couple of the trends that you've identified as well.
You've had a peek, huh? Which trends jumped out at you?
Well, a couple of the ones that kind of lend themselves to slow travel. So, we always think that, if you are able to stay in one destination longer, then, there's a lot of benefits to that for you and for the world. So one of them was the hotel hopping, which sounds counterintuitive because it doesn't sound like slow travel, but it was the idea that people stay in a destination longer, but they hotel hop.
No, I think it absolutely is. So Hotels.com unearthed this trend for 2026 called hotel hop. 1 in 2, about half of all travelers want to book multiple hotels within a single destination.
Wow, that's a huge proportion.
That's a lot of people, and their reasons are varied. They want to experience different neighborhoods, or they have found it's a way to max out on deals and discounts. And at first I thought, now that seems like a lot of work, going to one city and moving around to different destinations. And then I realized I've been doing it. I'm so trendy and I didn't even realize it. I took my first trip to Sydney this year and I stayed in 3 different places. That's a giant place.
Yes.
And I wanted to stay near the Opera House, but I wanted to experience Bondi. And also I spent some time at my office, so I needed to be near the office. And so that was one time I did it. And then I just did it again in London when I was on our work account. So I needed to stay at a lower cost, perfectly fine, business hotel near my office for convenience and cost. And then I wanted to experience one of these salvage stays that had appeared in the trend report. And it's a gorgeous hotel in London that used to be a magistrate's court and a jail. And now it's a luxury hotel. And, I could only spend one night there, but it was worth the hotel hop to get to experience that.
Mm-hmm. I saw on your list readaways. Now, I am a massive reader. You can see just a tiny portion of the books of my home behind my head. Readaways sound very tempting. Tell me more.
Readaways. This is another trend from Vrbo, Stays, Favo Direct, and Abratel. These private vacation people are renting holiday homes for getaways where the primary activity is reading. And intentionally, not just, I'm going to take a bunch of books and read. They're saying, no, okay, if you want to come with me, friends, on this trip, I want you to come. But guess what we're going to do? We're going to read. And it could be a book club saying we're all going to read the same book. It could be just from this hour to this hour. Everyone on this vacation is reading. Read whatever you want. I love it. I love a no-screen vacation. It always reunites me with my love of reading because I tend to get distracted at home. So I love that mentions of reading-related terms in Vrbo guest reviews have surged by 285%. Whether I took my book club or the best front porch at the beach to read a book on, all these terms are way up. I've seen on social media saying, my dream vacation. My friends and I all just bring books and don't talk to each other for 6 of 8 hours a day and read books. And then they're making it happen. They are renting private vacation homes, holiday homes with lots of nooks and crannies and beautiful places to just relax and read. Would you do it? Would you invite some friends along with you for a readaway?
I am so ready. I want to go right now, honestly. Yeah, I am definitely already contemplating a read-away trip right now. Now, to finish up, as promised, I want to mention some of the places that are showing up in these 2026 trend predictions. I've done this exercise in previous years, and there's usually been a lot of overlaps. I think maybe that's because maybe some tourism boards have big budgets one year and they get everybody's attention. Or, we just kind of have the same ideas at the same time. Might be a TV show or a movie that set a destination trend. But this year, it does seem that it's a lot more random. So I'm going to run through a few ideas from various places, starting with Expedia's list with the Smart Travel Health Check, which Melanie mentioned. So Hobart in Tasmania here in Australia is one. The Cotswolds in England, France, Okinawa, Japan, Montana, lots of different spots there. If we move to Lonely Planet's list of the best destinations, they do this every year, and this tends to skew to, a little bit more unique than some of the main lists. Yeah, and I would say this year it's similar. Peru, Botswana, Tipperary in Ireland, Reunion Island, Jaffna in Sri Lanka, Cartagena in Colombia, Mexico City, Sardinia in Italy, Barbados, Utrecht in the Netherlands, and Tunisia. So some really cool places there, and not necessarily the standard ones. From the Skyscanner report, and this is like trends from their data, they're seeing searches for New Zealand, Bhutan, Palau, Vanuatu, and Hiroshima in Japan. So those are some interesting places that are not always so visited. The Kontiki report, I think, is, a fairly unimaginative result, but probably pretty accurate. So their top 10 destinations were Japan, Scandinavia, Georgia, the country, South Korea, Albania, South Africa, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Peru, and New Zealand. So I would say that these are places that have seen a lot of visitors in the last few years. And certainly with some of them, they are places that a lot more people I know are going to, like Georgia, Albania, South Korea, have already been this year or the last few years. So it seems legit. The Virtuoso one, which was the more luxe end, they have some interesting places on their list. Riga in Latvia, I've long wanted to return there. Great city. It's 20 plus years since my visit. Cornwall in England, Catalonia in Spain, Deer Valley in Utah in the US, the Philippines specifically for snorkeling, Bolivia, Kenya, Dolomites in Italy. So interesting list there. Explore Worldwide had 3 main areas I thought were of interest: Algeria, Costa Rica, and Italy in particular, the Dolomites. So there's some recurring things there. The Forbes report accessed a few different experts who gave their predictions: Palawan in the Philippines, Sumba in Indonesia, Rio in Brazil, Albania there again, Bhutan there again, Namibia, Rwanda, Iceland. I feel like Iceland is just a long-term trend, for the last maybe 10 years, Costa Rica and London. And finally, Intrepid's not hot list. So their not hot list is lesser known destinations that are well set up to have more tourism. So it kind of ties together with what Expedia was trying to do with matching the data of where people want to go with places that are not over touristed and are well set up to have tourism, but of course with a completely kind of different audience in mind. So on the not hot list from Intrepid, parts of Sierra Leone, Kyrgyzstan, Eastern Turkey, Romania, El Salvador, the Great Basin National Park in Nevada in the US, Oulu in Finland, the European Capital of Culture for 2026, and a few more. I will leave the list in the show notes, of course. Yeah, as I'd said earlier, not so many overlaps as usual in these kinds of lists. I can't say that, everyone is talking about place X or Y. And I think that's a really good thing, because it is a whole lot better if we can disperse all our visits to more places. It's better for everybody, better for even the people who are going to the over-touristed places if there are fewer people there, definitely better for those places themselves. And personally, I think way more interesting to travel to somewhere that I know little about. So, that is one of my favourite things to do. So I'm curious to know, what are your ideas for 2026 travel trends? Come and chat with us in the Facebook or LinkedIn groups for Thoughtful Travellers. Just search for Thoughtful Travellers in those platforms and you'll find us. I'll also be talking about this at Substack, so sign up at thoughtfultravel.substack.com to hear more. And I am also linking to all of those studies and reports that I've referred to in the show notes, so you can go into more detail if you want to. A big thanks to Melanie Fish from Expedia and Brett Mitchell from Intrepid Travel for their input. It was really great to talk to them. If you want to know any more about this and see some of those links, you can hit the show notes for this episode. You can find them at notaballerina.com/371. As always, thanks so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.